Ndăkaga is the language I created for dragons, specifically to stand in for Draconic in D&D. If you're new here, that video will be linked in the description and in a card somewhere. Of course, Draconic is used for spells by wizards, so naturally it needs to have some kind of writing system, so they can write it in their books. I promised to explain that writing system in a follow-up to that initial feature video, which was a while ago. So here is that follow-up. The writing system for Ndăkaga is called the Epojenggid. This is derived from the word epo, meaning stone, combined with jenge, a postposition meaning on the front of, with a nominalizer id. You could translate it as something like thing upon stone, though if you're being poetic, you can use the fact that the id suffix is from ide, which does mean thing, but also means word. So we could also call it words upon the face of stone, if we're being poetic. The name comes from the fact that, like the older Irish writing system Ogham, the Epojenggid was originally written by carving marks from the edge or a natural crack in stone. This aesthetic fits with dragons scratching messages onto a cliff face with their supernaturally sharp claws. This natural edge or crack then forms a central line that helps define the characters. The Epojenggid is an alphabet, and consonant characters are written above or to the right of that line, while vowel characters are written below or to the left of that line. Direction of writing is either left to right or up to down. Of course, the lines might not be entirely straight or aligned with vertical or horizontal axes, so you can figure it out by rotating from those reference points. One use of the Epojenggid is in the spell circles you've seen in some of my videos. I imagine these originated with wizards carving the runes onto raised circular stone platforms that served as permanent spells, but later could be replicated in a flat format on the ground. Wizards are forever debating whether vowels or consonants should go on the inside of the circle, though I tend to go with vowels on the inside. There are 18 consonant glyphs, which correspond to the 19 consonants of Ndăkaga minus the glottal stop, which is not represented in the script at all. Although there are some marginal cases where a glottal stop will contrast with just nothing between vowels, that doesn't come up very often. Most of these consonants are derived from pictographs, though the abstraction into this style of system definitely hides those origins. Most of the Paddle series, though, is derived from the coronal consonants, either by adding a stroke or, in the case of ch, doubling and overlapping the source character. The use of modified characters reflects the history of these paddles deriving from paddleized coronals. One last note on the consonants. Ndăkaga allows initial clusters of a homoorganic nasal and obstruent. Because the nasal and the obstruent are always going to be the same place of articulation, the distinction is frequently glossed over by spelling the nasal with the character for ng, regardless of what the actual nasal is, just as in the name of the language, Ndăkaga, and also in words like ntrug and mbre. This only happens at the start of a word, though, because you can get nasal obstruent clusters with different places of articulation word internally. There are 5 vowel characters to cover the 8 vowels of Ndăkaga. If you've seen the conlang feature, you may know that the language has a system of vowel harmony that divides vowels into hard and soft, or shachi and afa. Words can only have all hard vowels or all soft vowels, with the exception of the low vowel a, which can be the soft counterpart of but can also exist as a transparent vowel immune to vowel harmony. This came from a change in Proto-Reptilian, where schwa lowered to a, merging with the existing a vowel, which was transparent, while the high central I shifted down to a to fill the vacant space of the schwa. Because of this setup, rather than having separate vowel characters for all of the vowels, hard and soft vowels share a character with their corresponding vowel, and the distinction is made by drawing a stroke, the shahiri or hard scratch, through all vowels in a word, parallel to the central line. Reflecting the history of the language, there are two characters for a. One corresponds to a when unmarked, and to when marked with the shahiri, and the other is pronounced a whether it's marked with a shahiri or not. In soft words, the choice of which character is used generally depends on etymology. For instance, a can mean egg or conifer, but the word for egg is derived from Proto-Reptilian corresponding to that old schwa that becomes an a that alternates with the hard vowel So it's written with the corresponding soft a character. A meaning conifer is derived from the Proto-Reptilian word a, which has the ancestral a that is transparent to vowel harmony. So it's spelled with the transparent a character. Of course, these spellings might not be totally consistent since dragons don't necessarily closely follow standardized spelling. That's basically all you need for the system, but let me talk a little bit about the decisions behind it. I had originally conceived of this being a syllabary or abegida, but the restricted set of shapes I set for myself combined with the above average number of vowels led me to choose an alphabet for Ndăkaga. Part of this was from my own aesthetic choices. I wanted all lines to originate on the center line, which ruled out a lot of complex shapes I could have used. It just made more sense to keep it to a smaller set of symbols, especially since adding diacritics was a bit difficult in this aesthetic. On the subject of the shahiri, I definitely could have just made 8 vowel characters and be done with it, but I find the most interesting writing systems have some unique elements that solve some kind of problem. To me, it goes back to a presentation I saw by Kenan Kigunda at a language creation conference. I'll link to that video and my interview of Kenan in the description, but what I took out of it was the idea that the development of writing systems is in part driven by speakers solving problems. His first principle is, don't get it right the first time, meaning that from the beginning, there should be problems with the writing system. In this case, because of the shortcuts scribes often took. It's really common for innovations in writing systems to come out of some need that isn't being filled. The first alphabet developed when the Greeks needed to represent vowels and co-opted Phoenician consonant glyphs for them. Japanese needed phonetic characters for inflectional morphology and foreign loanwords, so they grabbed some simplifications of kanji they had developed as pronunciation aids. So, what I did here was to create a system that was just a bit defective and asked, how would the speakers of this language solve this problem? We don't have enough vowel characters, and it's useful to have some representation of the different vowels. But with the vowel harmony system, dragons may think less in terms of making new vowels and more in marking whole words as hard or soft, as shahide and afaide. And some problems don't need to be solved. The glottal stop doesn't really need to be noted that often, so I don't write it. I also don't have any punctuation or use white space in the script at all, as its original function would just be scratching out short messages to mark territory, give warnings, etc. The shahiri does give some information about word boundaries, though it's not entirely reliable. If two hard words are adjacent and there are less than two consonants between their vowels, the shahiri will just run right through both. But if there are two or more intervening consonants, the shahiri will be discontinuous. That helps because if you have a shahiri running below two consonants in a row, as in insraf, you can be pretty sure that those two consonants are within the same word. But when reading a text, there can be places where you don't immediately see the word boundaries. After much searching, I haven't found a case where this causes actual ambiguity, but as I create more words and text, I wouldn't be surprised if it pops up. That's it for a primer of the Epojenggid. It's ultimately a fairly simple system. There are still developments to be had. I did a stream a while back where I started working on a cursive form that would be far more convenient to write with a stylus in a spell book, but that's going to take significant work. You can check out all my streams and videos for Ndăkaga here on this channel, and you can follow along with my current project, the Dawn and Dusk varieties of Chisfafi, the language of the Fae, at 8 a.m. Central Time, Saturday. A big thanks to all of my patrons over on Patreon, where you could have seen this video early, and to everyone who watches, likes, and subscribes. Thank you for watching, and happy conlaying.